This tank has saved its crew after taking 14 direct RPG hits, and this one stores ammunition right next to the driver. One penetrating shot, and the entire crew gets vaporized. But here's the problem. Every military on Earth claims they have the best main battle tank, but most of them are full of shit. To figure out who actually built the best tank, we have to rank them from worst to the absolute best. We are kicking things off with Italy's C1 Ariete. The Italians got ambitious, wanting their own homegrown beast that could stand toe-to-toe with the Leopard 2 and M1 Abrams. Otto Millera handled the firepower, Iveco built the chassis, and they spent so long developing this thing that by the time it rolled out, it was already outdated. Only 200 units were ever made because nobody wanted to buy them, which turned spare parts into a nightmare. The gun itself is solid, a 120mm L44 smoothbore that fires NATO standard rounds, including the DM53 tungsten penetrator capable of punching through serious armor. The fire control system was actually pretty advanced for the early 90s, with commander-independent thermal sights, but here's the kicker. They never really updated it. So while American and German tanks kept getting better optics year after year, the Ariete just sat there with mediocre hunter-killer capabilities that look downright primitive by 2026 standards. Now here's where things get brutal. The armor protection on this tank is embarrassingly weak. The side armor is so thin, it's comparable to the Leopard 1A3 from the 1970s. You know, the tank that couldn't stop modern threats even back then. But the real disaster is the ammunition storage. Unlike the Abrams, which wisely stashes all its rounds in a turret bustle with blowout panels, the Ariete stores a bunch of ammo in the hull right next to the driver. One penetrating hit to the hull and boom, catastrophic detonation that wipes out the entire tank and crew. Italy tried slapping on add-on armor kits called Peace Support Operation and WAOR to fix this mess, adding spaced composite armor to protect against RPGs. Sure, it helps a bit against shape charges, but it makes the tank heavier without actually fixing the terrible frontal armor density. The upgraded AMV variant bumps the engine from 1,270 horsepower to 1,500 and adds wider tracks, which helps mobility, but you can't upgrade away from bad armor geometry. At roughly 59.5 tons, the Ariete can hit 40 miles per hour, fires DM53 rounds with about 600 millimeters of penetration, and would absolutely struggle against modern threats like the T-90M. It's basically a peacetime parade tank caught in a high-intensity war era. Next on the list, the Type 99A, China's answer to everyone asking, can you build something that doesn't just copy Soviet tanks? Introduced in 2011, this heavyweight bruiser represents the elite end of the People's Liberation Army arsenal. Unlike the mass-produced Type 96 or the lightweight Type 15 mountain tanks, the Type 99A is reserved for the best combined arms brigades, mostly up north, where they're ready to throw down against Russia or handle business on the Korean Peninsula. This thing fires a ZPT-98 125mm smoothbore gun with a carousel autoloader, cutting the crew down to 3. The star ammunition is the DTC-10 tungsten penetrator. Leaked data suggests it punches through about 680 millimeters of armor at 1.24 miles out. That's enough to wreck most T-72s and T-90s and definitely penetrate the hull armor of Western tanks, though it falls a bit short of the latest American 120mm, which reportedly hits over 800mm. Still, 680mm is nothing to sneeze at. But here's where it gets weird. The Type 99A has a laser dazzler mounted on the turret called the JD3. This thing actively detects enemy laser rangefinders and then slews a high-powered laser right back at them to blind their optics, or literally burn the operator's retinas. Effective range is about 2.2 miles, and it's both a defensive countermeasure and an offensive weapon to mess with enemy situational awareness. That's some sci-fi stuff right there. The armor package is no joke either. modular composite blocks overlaid with Fangyu-4 or Fangyu-5 heavy explosive reactive armor. Unlike the old-school ERA that just stops shape charges, the Fangyu-5 is specifically designed to defeat kinetic penetrators. It detonates heavy flyer plates that shear or yaw the incoming tungsten rod before it even hits the base armor. The downside? Terrible gun depression of only -5 to 6 degrees, which means it can't fight effectively from hull-down positions on reverse slopes. Mobility is insane, with a 150 HP2 twin-turbo diesel pumping out 1,500 horsepower. At 60 to 64 tons, that's nearly 27 horsepower per ton, letting this beast accelerate hard and hit 50 miles per hour on roads. But here is the problem: reliability. The engine has a history of failures, oil leaks, and loose components during early production. Modern batches are supposedly better, but compared to proven German MTU diesels, reliability remains questionable. Number 8 is Leclerc from France. Leave it to the French to build a tank that's simultaneously brilliant and infuriating. The AMX-56 Leclerc, introduced in 1992, broke with convention by prioritizing speed, automation, and hitting targets on the first shot instead of just piling on more armor. The result is a compact, high-tech machine that weighs significantly less than American or German tanks while still packing serious firepower. The secret sauce is the Wärtsilä V8X Hyperbar engine, which is both brilliant and terrifying from a maintenance perspective. It uses a separate gas turbine to supercharge the diesel engine, completely eliminating turbo lag. The tactical advantage is insane. The Leclerc can accelerate from 0 to 20 miles per hour in under 6 seconds, making it arguably the fastest accelerating tank on the planet. This supports the French shoot and scoot doctrine, where you engage, hit the target, and disappear before return fire can even get accurate. The downside? Mechanically complex, fuel-thirsty, and prone to reliability issues that have plagued the fleet for decades. The armament is a 120mm L52 smoothbore gun. That longer barrel compared to the standard L44 means higher muzzle velocity and better range. The real magic happens with the bustle-mounted autoloader sitting in the rear of the turret. It holds 22 ready rounds and can spit out 12 rounds per minute, one every 5 seconds. Crucially, it's separated from the crew by an armored bulkhead with blowout panels, so if the ammo cooks off, the explosion vents upward instead of killing everyone inside. The armor is modular, using titanium and ceramic composites, but the focus on keeping weight down around 60 to 63 tons means it's physically thinner than an M1 A2 or Challenger 2. The current modernization program, the Leclerc XLR, integrates the tank into France's Scorpion digital battle network and adds modular armor packages to the sides for RPG and IED protection, plus a remote weapon station. Critics point out the XLR doesn't fix the fundamental reliability problems with the Hyperbar engine, so France's Speed Demon remains a logistical headache. Combat weight sits at 63 tons, top speed is 44 miles per hour, and that 120mm L52 gun keeps French armor competitive even if the engine keeps mechanics awake at night. Number 7 is Russia's T-14 Armata. Russia rolled out the T-14 Armata in 2015 with massive fanfare, marketing it as the world's first fourth-generation tank and the future of armored warfare. On paper, the specs look absolutely insane. The unmanned turret concept puts the entire 3-man crew in an armored capsule at the front of the hull, completely isolated from ammunition and fuel. If the turret gets blown off, the crew theoretically stays safe in their protective cocoon. The 2A82 1-rem 125mm gun supposedly has higher muzzle energy than Western L55 guns, and the Vacuum 1 APF SDS round claims penetration exceeding 900mm of armor with its 900mm long penetrator. The Afghanit active protection system allegedly intercepts not just missiles, but kinetic energy penetrators flying at hypersonic speeds, something no Western system even attempts. Here's the problem: zero proven combat experience. Not a single battlefield engagement. Nothing proven. Russia planned to field 2,300 units by 2020, but as of 2026, fewer than 40 exist, mostly prototypes gathering dust. The X-shaped A-85-3A engine has proven unreliable and prone to overheating in testing. Despite Russia desperately needing modern armor during the Ukraine conflict, the T-14 hasn't seen frontline service. Intelligence suggests the Kremlin either considers it too valuable or too unreliable to risk in actual combat. All those impressive claims about the gun, ammunition, and active protection system remain exactly that, claims. The Leopard 2 has decades of combat data. The Abrams has proven crew survivability in hundreds of engagements. The Merkava's trophy system has a documented combat record. The T-14 has parade appearances and propaganda videos. Until it actually faces real threats and demonstrates those capabilities under fire, it's just a very expensive prototype. Theoretical superiority means nothing without battlefield validation, which is why, despite the futuristic technology, the complete absence of combat proof keeps it from ranking higher. Number 6 brings Japan's Type 90. Japan built this tank in the late 1980s with one mission in mind: stop a Soviet armored invasion of Hokkaido. The geography dictated everything about the design. Japan needed a tank with serious power-to-weight ratio to handle mountains and a compact frame to navigate the narrow roads and bridges scattered across rural Japan. Due to strict arms export laws at the time, the Type 90 never got sold abroad, so it remains exclusively Japanese property with zero international market presence. The standout feature is the high-drop pneumatic suspension system, which sounds boring until you realize what it actually does. The tank can actively adjust its ground clearance and tilt the entire hull forward or backward. By tilting the nose down, the Type 90 artificially increases the depression angle of its main gun beyond what the turret mechanics normally allow. This lets it fire from steep reverse slopes, exposing only the turret roof to enemies before backing down behind cover. Classic defensive fighting at its finest. Power comes from a Mitsubishi 10ZG 2-stroke diesel engine cranking out 1,500 horsepower. Two-stroke engines deliver excellent torque and power density, helping the Type 90 blast from 0 to 200 meters in just 20 seconds. The trade-off is acoustic noise. This thing is loud, and it produces visible exhaust smoke that gives away positions. The armament is a license-produced Rheinmetall 120mm L-44 gun fed by a mechanical bustle autoloader similar to the Leclerc, cutting the crew to 3. The autoloader enables a consistent 4-second reload time, one of the fastest reload speeds globally. The catch is magazine capacity, only about 18 to 19 ready rounds. Once those are gone, the crew has to manually restock the autoloader from the hull, which is slow and dangerous during active combat. The armor is modular ceramic composite that was cutting edge back in 1990, but the Type 90 never received the extensive upgrade packages seen on Leopards or Abrams. The boxy turret shape presents vertical surfaces that are less effective against modern long rod penetrators compared to the wedge-shaped armor on newer designs. Still, for defending Japanese home islands with specialized suspension and rapid-fire capability, the Type 90 remains a formidable defensive platform even if it's showing its age against modern threats. Number 5 is Merkava Mark IV from Israel. Developed by Mantak for the IDF, this tank has one overriding philosophy: crew survival above everything else. The entire layout is predicated on keeping soldiers alive, which is why the engine sits in the front instead of the rear. By placing that massive engine block up front, it acts as a huge layer of spaced armor protecting the crew compartment in the back from frontal penetrating hits. It's unconventional, but when your country has mandatory conscription and a small population, losing trained crews is unacceptable. The Merkava MiG-4M variant, nicknamed Windbreaker, carries the Trophy Active Protection System, which has more combat experience than any other APS on the planet. The trophy uses flat-panel radars on the turret to detect incoming anti-tank missiles and rockets. Once it picks up a threat, it calculates the intercept vector and fires a pattern of explosively formed penetrators to destroy the projectile roughly 10 to 30 meters from the tank. During conflicts in Gaza in 2014 and the recent fighting, Trophy demonstrated a near-perfect interception rate against single-launch RPGs and ATGMs like the Russian Kornet. The system can be overwhelmed, though. Saturation attacks with multiple RPGs fired simultaneossly from close range, or drones dropping charges vertically from above, can defeat it. The firepower comes from an IMI-1 20mm smoothbore gun capable of firing the Alahat gun-launched anti-tank guided missile. But the really unique feature is the internally loaded 60mm mortar. This lets the crew engage infantry hiding behind cover or dug into trenches without exposing themselves, a critical lesson learned from brutal urban combat in Lebanon and Gaza. The rear hull has a clamshell door primarily used for ammunition resupply, but in emergencies the crew can clear that space to evacuate wounded personnel or even transport a small infantry team, giving the Merkava a secondary role as a heavy ambulance or battlefield taxi. All this protection and versatility comes at a cost. The Merkava weighs a chunky 72 tons, making it one of the heaviest tanks in service. The 1,500 horsepower diesel engine provides adequate mobility, but don't expect it to win any races against the Leclerc or K2. The suspension is tuned for the rocky basalt terrain of the Golan Heights, not high-speed road marches. Number 4 is UK's Challenger 2. The British went a completely different direction from the rest of NATO and kept a rifled one. The Challenger 2's L30A1 rifled gun exists because the British Army prioritized high-explosive squash-head ammunition. HESH rounds flatten against armor or concrete walls and detonate, causing spalling on the inside that shreds everything. It's devastating against bunkers and light vehicles, fitting British doctrine for versatility. Problem is rifling imparts spin to projectiles, which creates drag and slightly reduces the velocity and penetration of kinetic energy rounds compared to smoothbore equivalents. It's a trade-off that makes the Challenger 2 less effective in pure tank versus tank duels, but more flexible in combined arms operations. What the Challenger 2 lacks in gun technology, it makes up for with absolutely monstrous armor. The Dorchester armor package, an evolution of Chobham composite, is widely considered one of the densest and most effective passive armor systems in existence. During the Iraq invasion in 2003, Challenger 2s absorbed dozens of RPG hits with 0 penetrations. One unit reportedly survived 14 RPG strikes and a Milan anti-tank missile without being knocked out. That resilience defines the platform and keeps British crews alive when everything goes sideways. The theater entry standard variant, nicknamed Megatron, adds massive blocks of explosive reactive armor to the sides and lower glacis, along with slat armor for additional protection. This pushes the combat weight to an absolutely staggering 82.5 tons, making it one of the heaviest tanks currently fielded. That extreme weight creates serious mobility problems. The Perkins CV12 diesel engine only produces 1,200 horsepower, which gives the Challenger 2 a terrible power-to-weight ratio of approximately 14.5 horsepower per ton in TES configuration. It's slow to accelerate and struggles in soft mud, a major disadvantage in theaters like Ukraine, where ground conditions vary wildly. The British military recognized these limitations, especially the ammunition incompatibility with NATO allies using smoothbore guns, and contracted Rheinmetall to produce the Challenger 3. This upcoming variant will mount a new turret with the L55A1 smoothbore gun, trophy active protection system, and a more powerful engine. It's basically building a new tank on the existing hull. Until then, the Challenger 2 remains a slow-moving fortress that can take incredible punishment but struggles to keep pace with modern battlefield mobility requirements. Number 3 is South Korea's K2 Black Panther. South Korea looked at the global tank market and decided to build something that combines the best lessons from both Western and Eastern design philosophies. The K2 Black Panther, developed by Hyundai Rotem to replace ancient M48 Pattons, is arguably the most advanced tank currently in serial production. It also achieved massive export success, most notably the deal with Poland for nearly 1,000 units, including production technology transfer, basically the arms deal of the century. The K2 uses a 120mm L55 smoothbore gun fed by a belt-type autoloader. But the real party trick is the Korean Smart Top Attack Munition, or KSTAM-2. This projectile fires like an artillery shell in a high arc, deploys a parachute over the target area, uses sensors to detect enemy tanks below, and then fires an explosively formed penetrator straight down into the thin roof armor. This gives the K2 an indirect fire capability out to about 5 miles, letting it engage targets hidden behind hills or urban buildings without direct line of sight. For conventional direct fire, it uses the K279 tungsten round with penetration around 700 millimeters of armor, comparable to German DM63 ammunition. The mobility system is genuinely futuristic. The K2 features an in-arm suspension unit where each road wheel can be controlled independently. The tank can kneel to lower its profile, stand to clear obstacles, or lean during cornering. Most impressively, it can tilt the chassis backwards to increase gun elevation for targeting helicopters or insurgents positioned on high ridges, a specific requirement for fighting in Korea's mountainous terrain. Early models used German MTU engines, but recent production batches switched to domestic Doosan engines with S&T Dynamics transmissions. The transmission has faced reliability teething issues during the transition, though newer batches are improving. While the frontal armor is rated to stop modern 120mm rounds, the K2 sacrifices side protection to maintain a reasonable combat weight around 61 tons. The side armor is relatively thin steel, making flank shots a serious vulnerability. The Polish K2PL variant addresses this by adding heavy composite blocks to the sides and rear, likely pushing the weight higher. Still, with 1,500 horsepower pushing 55 tons, top speeds hitting 50 miles per hour, and that ridiculous smart munition capability, the K2 Black Panther represents the cutting edge of modern armor technology. At second place is Germany's Leopard 2. This is the gold standard for NATO armor, and the benchmark every other Western tank gets measured against. Since rolling out in 1979, it's evolved through continuous upgrades from the A4 with its boxy turret through to the cutting-edge A7 Plus and A8 variants. It strikes a balance between mobility, firepower, and protection that few other tanks match, which explains why nearly 20 nations have adopted it for their armored forces. The Leopard 2A6 and A7 variants use the Rheinmetall 120mm L55 gun with a barrel 1.3 meters longer than the L44 found on the Abrams. That extra length lets propellant gases expand longer, imparting higher velocity to projectiles. The new DM73 APFSDS round uses high-pressure propellant to maximize the L55's capability, offering an 8% increase in range and penetration over the previous DM63. This lets the Leopard 2 engage targets effectively at ranges where shorter-barreled tanks struggle to achieve penetration. The A7 variant features added modular armor on the upper glacis and improved mine protection, but the design has one significant structural vulnerability: ammunition storage in the hull to the left of the driver. In Syria, Turkish Leopard 2A4 got destroyed when ISIS anti-tank missiles struck this area, causing the ammunition to detonate catastrophically. While the A7 adds armor there, the layout remains a fundamental risk compared to the Abrams' total isolation of ammunition in the turret bustle with blowout panels. The latest Leopard 2A8 variant integrates Trophy Active Protection System as standard equipment. finally addressing vulnerability to guided missiles that plagued earlier models. With combat weight around 66 to 68 tons depending on configuration, the MTU diesel engine provides excellent reliability and fuel efficiency compared to gas turbine alternatives. Top speed hits about 42 miles per hour on roads, and with DM-73 ammunition achieving penetration estimates around 750 to 800 millimeters of armor, the Leopard 2 remains the most widely adopted and continuously improved Western tank design, setting the standard for European armored forces. And your king is M1 Abrams from the United States of America. The M1A2 SEPV3 is the current variant standard of the U.S. Army, and calling it a beast undersells how ridiculous this machine is. This monster weighs in at 73.6 tons, and that massive weight comes from packing in absurd amounts of depleted uranium composite armor and advanced systems integration. It's the heaviest main battle tank currently fielded by any NATO force, and that weight buys arguably the best crew protection on the planet. The turret cheeks utilize a mesh of depleted uranium encased in steel. Depleted uranium is 2.5 times denser than steel, providing immense resistance against kinetic penetrators trying to punch through. But the real genius is ammunition storage. All main gun rounds are stored in the turret bustle behind substantial blast doors. If the tank gets penetrated and the ammunition cooks off, the blast vents upward through blowout panels instead of into the crew compartment. There are countless documented cases of Abrams crews walking away from tanks that burned down to the chassis, a survival rate impossible in Soviet-designed tanks like the T-72 or even the Italian Ariete. The SEPV3 also integrates Trophy Active Protection System, adding hard kill capability against anti-tank guided missiles. While the Abrams uses the shorter 120mm L44 gun instead of the longer L55, the United States compensates with superior ammunition technology. The 120mm round features a segmented penetrator tip designed specifically to defeat heavy explosive reactive armor like Russian Relect or Malachite. It tips or detonates the explosive reactive armor plate with a precursor segment, allowing the main depleted uranium penetrator rod to pass through undisturbed. Estimates place its penetration capability over 800 millimeters of armor, making it one of the most lethal anti-armor rounds currently fielded. The Honeywell AGT gas turbine engine, producing 1,500 horsepower, is both brilliant and problematic. The turbine runs quiet. Soldiers call it whispering death, has massive torque, and can burn diesel, jet fuel, gasoline, or marine diesel without modification. It lacks a radiator, removing a common catastrophic failure point. The downsides are brutal, though. It consumes fuel at idle rates nearly as high as when moving, and the exhaust plume is extremely hot, creating a massive thermal signature visible to drones and satellites. The logistical tail required to keep an Abrams division supplied with fuel is significantly larger than for diesel-powered Leopard 2. The Abrams represents American military philosophy, overwhelming capability backed by overwhelming logistics. It's the best protected tank in the world, but you better have the supply chain to keep it running.